Hi, everyone. I am Fran Strickland, and you're with Tapped In with Verily Biz Solutions. I'm delighted to see all of you. Verily Biz Solutions is all about helping owners, founders, CXOs, entrepreneurs, people who are very, very busy in their everyday life to continue to grow and evolve, not just in their business and professionally, but also personally. And so on this platform, we'll have guests from all walks of life and different expertise because what we're doing is supporting the whole person and not just one dimension of them. So today I have the lovely Deb Krier with me. Deb is a fantastic business strategist, entrepreneur. She has great history in that space, but she does something especially unique where she is sharing from her heart based upon her own life journey. And when she talks to us today, I have no doubt that as she share, it will touch you just as much as touched me, and it will be unique to you. So, Deb, thank you so much for being with me today. How
Oh,
are you?
Fran, I am so excited to be here and I am so honored to be a guest on your program. We're going to have such a great discussion.
Absolutely. I cannot wait. We talked a
Mhm,
couple weeks
mhm,
ago, and it was just like I have known you for a very
mhm,
long time.
mhm. Sisters.
And that's right, sisters. And the reality is, people say, "Oh, well, it's hard to kind of connect, over Zoom." Of course, we have much more
Mhm,
experience today
mhm,
than we started 5 years
mhm.
ago.
Right.
But the reality is, the energy of your passion and your outlook is contagious. So I'm infused. I'm ready to go.
Hey, we're
So
here. We're ready. Mhm, mhm.
Well, Deb, why don't we start out here?
Mhm.
Please tell me and tell our audience what is it that you are endeavoring to bring and to whom?
Mhm. Well, again, thank you so much. You mentioned I'm a business owner, entrepreneur, and then I was thrown a curveball a little over 10 years ago and told that I have cancer. And so since then, not entirely of me my own will, my business coach has shoved me an awful lot, but I have started really working with people who are on a journey with cancer, whether it's themselves or they know someone. Frequently I get them, my friend, my coworker, my sister, my whoever has cancer and I don't know what to do question. But then I started really working in the last year with executives and business owners who are told, you've got cancer. And they're going to say, in most cases, exactly what I said. I looked at my doctor and I said, I'm sorry, I don't have time for that. And she looked at me like, kind of like, "Hmm, okay." Um, but more importantly, we feel very isolated and that we can't tell anyone about it because they're going to think we can't run our company, we can't run our division, our department, or whatever it is. And so we go through this alone. And we're very concerned not only for our own health and for our family and all of that, but is our business going to survive this? Is my leadership going to survive? And so that is what I've been working a lot on, is helping those people.
Mm, okay. So I hear that it's twofold. Yes, there is that deeply personal
Mhm, mhm,
experience that one goes through when they receive
mhm,
such a diagnosis. Um, and that certainly immediately,
mhm,
family,
mhm,
the circle, your social
mhm,
circle that's
mhm,
around you, but you also bring it into the context
mhm,
of how your business,
mhm, mhm.
how are you going to navigate that
Right. Mhm,
aspect?
mhm,
Okay. Now, based upon your experience and what you've seen in working with others, what tends to be the the biggest block of concern that they have besides can I do it
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
general?
Right. I think there's two. First is who and how do I tell people? And then the other is, is my business prepared to survive this? And in so many cases, especially for small business owners and medium-sized business owners, we haven't taken the steps to make sure that our business can survive, even if we, heaven forbid, go on vacation, right? And do we have continuity planning? Do people who need to know what our bank account is? What vendors do we need to pay? All of those various things, because we're the business owner, we're the senior executive, and so we think we can do that all ourselves. We don't need to tell anyone. We don't want to tell anyone. And ooh, what if they figure out they really don't need us? And of course that's not the case, but it really is something where we've just been going and working and doing and putting in our 90 hours a week or whatever it is, and not really stopping to think about the what ifs. And right, we want to be the ostrich in with our head in the sand. That's just human nature. We don't want to think, well, what if this happens to me? Well, sadly, something probably will happen to you. So, let's take the steps to make sure that you and your business, come out of this okay.
Wow. And something that came to mind as you were talking was the reality, and it's something that on my side as a business strategist that when I'm working with a business owner
Mhm,
is if your business can't run without you,
mhm,
if you have to be in the
mhm,
center of every
mhm,
decision, and everything is coming to you, then that's really
mhm.
kind of a waste.
Right.
It
Mhm,
takes you away from
mhm,
being maybe more
mhm,
strategic and
mhm,
working on the
mhm,
business. It slows a lot
mhm,
down. It's a
mhm,
bottleneck,
mhm,
and that's just in general.
mhm,
And then when you think about the in the event of an illness like
mhm,
cancer, that the great idea is to be proactive,
mhm,
because not only does it enable you in the event that something does develop,
mhm,
but also just generally how you run the
mhm.
business and how
Right.
you can enjoy the experience of running a business.
Right. Yeah. I think one of the things, and I'm sure you see this when you're working with companies, is it is such a wonderful thing to delegate and to empower our employees, right?
Hmm.
We hired them because they know what they're doing.
Hmm.
And so give them that opportunity to do it. Show them that you have faith in them and that you trust them. And it doesn't have to be because you're sick. You just, we hire those, and if you've got somebody that you're thinking, I don't know, well, then that's a different problem, right?
Right.
But yeah, give them the opportunity to shine, because that's why they are there. Is you saw that potential, you saw that knowledge, so now is the time to really be allowing them to come forward.
Right, right. And the other piece is it is in our personal lives. Now
Mhm,
this happens to me. I live alone. I have my two fur babies, Max and Queen. I know they're not going to be
mhm,
doing too much to run my personal affairs.
mhm,
And I often
mhm.
think, I said, well, I'm here. Well, what if
What if?
something
Mhm,
happens?
mhm,
Or um, do I have
mhm,
things where people can
mhm.
find it?
Right.
Can they get into
Mhm.
my phone or
Can
whatever?
somebody take care of your fur babies?
That's
That's
right.
one of
Can
the most
somebody take
important
care of my fur
things.
babies?
Mhm,
Those kinds of
mhm,
things.
mhm,
But the reality is that there is an element of maybe deciding I'm not going to stick my head in the
mhm,
sand,
mhm,
and I'm going to think holistically
mhm,
about it,
mhm,
regardless of
mhm,
what phase of life I
mhm,
might be in,
mhm.
what I'm
Right. Mhm,
experiencing. It's important to
mhm,
be proactive
mhm,
and pre-think about
mhm.
some of these things.
Right. Right.
But as things to happen, we can say that when we don't necessarily do
Mhm,
that.
mhm,
So tell me, I want to just for people to get a sense of what it's like to connect with you, to be having this
Mhm,
conversation and
mhm,
going through this
mhm,
process. What do you focus on?
mhm,
How do you draw them out or support them? Just give
mhm.
us a little of a flavor of that.
Right. Well, I'm not the warm, touchy-feely person. That's just
Uh-oh,
not me.
really?
I know, I know. If if somebody calls and says, "I have cancer," I don't say, "Oh, you can get through this." I live in the South now, so I can get real Southern all of a sudden, and I'm more likely to say bad words, and things that we can't say on a
Mhm.
podcast, right?
That's right.
And I but that is part of this is we are going to be angry. We are going to be afraid, even if it's a simple diagnosis. I mean, I've had three, two of which are very serious. And one sounds the worst. It's basal cell carcinoma. Doesn't that sound horrible?
Mm.
That is this simple little skin cancer that, is easy to treat. Now you have to watch, and things, but yeah, we just, we hear those things and we're afraid, we're fearful, we're angry. And it
Mhm.
is very important for us to feel and acknowledge and work through that process.
Mhm.
It is a grief part of
I
this
was
because
thinking that.
our
Yeah.
life is changing.
Right.
In some ways a little bit, in some ways a whole lot.
Mhm.
And so we have to work through that. And when we don't, it's just like with anything. If you lose a spouse, a child, a dear friend, um, and you don't go through that grieving process, then at some point it sneaks up on you and bites you.
Mhm.
And so it is very important to acknowledge those feelings and know that they're perfectly natural.
Mhm.
And but the key is to get out of them. Like, I have people who tell me, "Oh my gosh, you're so happy all of the time. You're so cheerful." And I tell them, "Well, you just don't see me when I'm not. I mean, I'm not gonna come on a podcast to go, oh, I know, right?" Um, and of course my husband, he's the one who gets all the ones that are, it's but yeah, I have bad days. I have days where I think, what did I do to deserve this?
Mhm.
Why is this happening to me?
Mhm.
And or just, today's a bad day. I hurt.
Mhm.
I don't feel good. Whatever it is, and I give myself the grace to feel that and then go, okay, now we're done having the pity party. We're going to go on. And so that's what I help people to understand is whatever they are feeling is natural.
Mhm.
I also like to help people laugh, right?
Mhm.
There's lots of medical studies that show that laughter really is healing, and there are numerous physical things that happen to you when you laugh. So as you're going through this or any type of sadness, depression, eh, try to laugh. Now, that said, if you need to consult a professional, then consult a professional. That's going to be the strongest thing you can absolutely do is to say, I need help. But yeah, those days where I'm just feeling awful pity potty, I'm going to go and I'm going to watch something funny on TV or, play with the dogs or the cats, things like that. And, just kind of get myself out of that.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, there is something that says a merry heart doth good like a
Mhm,
medicine,
mhm,
and many times, I found in my own life
mhm,
is if I can just do something that's ridiculous
mhm,
or think about
mhm,
something
mhm,
that brings me a chuckle,
mhm, mhm.
then
Right.
that really can alleviate that
Mhm,
pressure
mhm,
in so many
mhm,
different situations. So one thing you try to encourage them to do is one to acknowledge
mhm,
and
mhm,
experience those
mhm,
emotions,
mhm,
and not so much is human, but just
mhm,
to realize that it is
mhm.
a grieving
Right.
process.
Mhm,
It is a
mhm.
grief process,
Right.
and then to find ways to introduce some laughter,
Mhm. Right. You know
something that's lightening
yeah,
to you.
and here's the funny thing. You can fake laughing,
Mhm.
and your brain, which is so very powerful, your brain
Mhm.
doesn't know that you're faking that laughter. And so you get the physiological benefits. And so they do things like laughter yoga and things where, yeah, you fake laughing, and really, you fake laughing long enough and pretty soon you're laughing at yourself and it's a
Mhm.
real laugh. But yeah, how can you do that? And one of the things that I always try and do is to make my medical people laugh. I'm at a doctor usually once a week. And so I try and make them laugh because they all have really hard jobs. And so can I make them laugh? Can I make them kind of have a giggle or two?
Mhm. Mhm. So there's an element of, if you can, to be able to step outside of yourself,
Hmm.
and have some focus on serving or helping someone
Hmm.
else.
Right, right.
Mhm. Mhm. So what happens? I mean, you said it's important for people to say, I need help.
Hmm.
Okay. What happens in or with someone who is really isolated?
Hmm. The sad thing is this is very isolating no matter what.
Mhm.
I was posting on Facebook one time, and somebody I didn't even know, because I do my posts for the most part as public. And this person responded and said, I have never felt so alone in my entire life. It
Mm.
just broke your heart, right? Now, the incredible thing was all of the other people who responded and said, we're here for you. We don't know you. We don't know you from Adam, but we're gonna help. And I think it is very important for us to build that community. I very much wanted to go it alone, with just my very close friends and family. And
Mhm.
I discovered very quickly, no, I needed the broader support of people. And obviously it's a very, very personal choice. For some people, they want hundreds of people. For others, they want, a
Mhm.
handful. But
Right.
we need that community. We
Mhm.
need that support. Sometimes we need them to give us a kick in the you know what. Um,
Mhm.
but we need that community. And in the workplace, if you have built a workplace where, we always hear, and it's a great thing, right? Where work is like your family. I've all of
Mhm.
those things. They want to support you also. They
Mhm.
want to do what they can. And so, as we said, let them do that. But one of the things I found is just don't leave it vague. And whether you're asking, hey, Fran, let me know if you need anything,
Mhm.
or we don't, we as the person who has kids, we don't want to bother, we don't want to pester, but it's okay. It's okay to be specific. Can I bring
Mhm.
you dinner on Friday? Can I get you to bring me dinner on Friday? um
Mhm.
I've had to ask people to do things for me, and that was really hard. I'm an only child. I was brought up that I am strong and tough, and my mom very much taught me that. Excuse me. So for me to say I need X is very hard.
Mhm.
Whether it's personal or professional, it's there. But again, we're surrounded by people who want to help. So let's
Mhm.
give them that opportunity.
Mm. Mm. Yes, I remember I had an experience where, I was really kind of feeling that need to, I got to do it all. And I
Mhm,
had to tell myself that the people around me were there to support me,
mhm,
and to be comfortable
mhm,
with that.
mhm,
And that can take a pretty big shift
mhm. Right.
in one's thinking
Mhm,
to open
mhm,
oneself up to
mhm,
receive that kind
mhm.
of support.
Right. I think
But
it's hard for women because we're used to being the caregivers as
yes,
opposed to accepting care.
yes, yes, yes. I'm sure that that's a part of it. That's a part of it. So you shared, get help, focus at times on others
Mhm,
to bring joy
mhm,
or laughter to
mhm,
others. It's okay to recognize that yes, you're having this this range of emotion and reaction, that the fact of the nature of what's happening. It is a sense of loss.
Mhm.
Um, it is also recognizing that we're not an island. We're not
Mhm.
just here by ourselves, that
Mhm.
there is a great cloud of people
Mhm.
around us that are there and
Mhm.
willing,
Mhm.
very much willing, and do not feel imposed
Mhm.
upon to
Right.
be there to
Mhm.
support you, to
Mhm.
support you. Now, tell me a little bit. I mean, you talked about trying to make your caregivers, your medical team laugh.
Mhm.
That's a point that you serve others. And of course, you serve others,
Mhm.
other entrepreneurs who are going
Mhm.
through the similar circumstances. Um, in terms of how you go about, I mean, some of them, people may ask, if she's going to work with me and she's as enthusiastic and she has all these great insights and she seems to be so comfortable where she is. What can you say about how you help people begin the journey, begin
Mhm.
that conversation? What's your approach in that regard?
To listen, just to let them say what's going on.
Hmm.
There is that saying, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we should be listening twice as much. And, I'll be honest, sometimes that's hard. You know?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, ask them, "How are you feeling?" And
Hmm.
then don't say anything. And they might need a little while to process, to even answer, but you don't need to jump in. Just let them talk about how they're feeling, and you can ask some questions. It's not the place to be saying, "Well, this is what happened to me," because let's be honest, they don't care. All they need to know is I've been in the same situation. They don't need to know any of the details. Now, later on, they can ask the details. And I've had people say, "Hey, I had this reaction to radiation. Do you know anything?" Or things like, okay, that's different. But at the start, just let them tell their story. Let them say what their concerns are. And so my biggest thing would be, what brought you to me? What is it that we need to work on for you to get through this? And then just see what they say. They're probably not, they will have gone through a bit of a thought process. Do I need this, before they've ever talked to me, right? But we need to make sure that it's a good fit, and that they want to do this. And it is a challenge because, like I said, we don't want to bother. We don't want to tell people. Obviously, what I am told is completely confidential. But it's you're going through something that, in many cases, is life threatening, but you're having to think about other things. My family, my friends, my company, my clients, all of those things, and it can be overwhelming. So just listening to them talk about all that is what is so important.
Wow. So, much of what we've talked about is kind of that internal workings,
Mhm,
the
mhm,
psyche, and that the emotional
mhm,
piece. And so it's quite a lot of internal
mhm,
things
mhm,
that's
mhm,
evolving
mhm,
within the person. Now, how do you help them in terms of that external piece,
mhm,
that thing, that big old
mhm,
thing in the corner
mhm,
of the room,
mhm,
which
mhm,
is the business?
mhm.
How do you help them
Right,
in that space?
right. Well, I tell people the biggest thing that's back there is the fact that it's cancer gonna leap up again, right? We're gonna have that shadow forever. It's that elephant in the room, it's whatever. Okay. You do what you can to deal with that. But yeah, how are we going to work with the business? So I do business continuity planning. Obviously what they work through, they don't give me. I don't want to know their bank account information. I don't want to know any of that. But in many ways, it is crisis management planning. The what happens if
Hmm.
if you are all of a sudden unable to be there, who can do the things that need to be done, and what are the critical pieces, and when, Maybe it's just something that's done once a month, once a quarter. Well, if that doesn't get done, then what happens? So it's kind of thinking through those things. And even if it's not something that you're involved with, you still need to kind of know what's going on in your business. So, does this department do that? Because they're all going to have to start tying together. But kind of think through all of those. Think about what it is that you do that only you can do, and what can you delegate. And I tell you what, I'm as type A as it gets. And so for me, delegating is hard. But thinking through that really will help somebody. And like I said, a lot of this are just good business practices that we should be doing anyway. And so kind of thinking through those things and really sitting down and going, okay, here's what I do on a day-to-day basis. Here's, just those things that as the business owner, as executive, we just do by rote, right? Okay, I spend 20 minutes a day going through emails. I do this, I do this, I do this. Well, write that down. And then one of the other big pieces is, how are we going to communicate this? There are going to be some people who will tell quite a bit of detail, and then others that they don't want to say anything, right? Because they're going to think I can't manage the company. Well, you need to say something, because my background is corporate communications, and I discovered a long time ago that we don't like a vacuum. And so if there isn't information and there's something going on, then we make it up. And we almost never make it up in a good way, right? And so, yeah, so maybe, you're looking a little rough. You're coming in late every morning. Well, all of a sudden your staff thinks, uh-oh, he's got a drinking problem. And so you again, you can tell them whatever, however much you want. And some people you're going to go into more detail, things like that. But it's okay just to say, I've got a health issue right now. I'll keep you as posted as I can, but I need your help. And then that's where those people will step up and say, what can we do? And again, if they're like, well, too bad, so sad, then they need to be gone anyway. But yeah, you don't have to say much, but they've put 2 and 2 together, and you want to come up with 4 and not 10. So you want to control that narrative. And it's going to be different messages for employees, for clients, for consultants, all those various things. So you kind of think through all of that. But you don't have to go into big detail, but maybe tell them, if you have questions, please come and ask. Most people will not, but if you kind of have that open door, then they will come in and say things.
As you just went through this last part, something that's popped in my mind is that in these situations where things can feel so out of control for us, if one has the capacity to stand still just a moment, with the help of someone, or maybe without the help, but to make deliberate type decisions, more deliberate decisions about various aspects, the business continuity. Can I help or serve someone else? Can I bring some joy to someone else? It's okay, giving yourself permission to have all of those feelings and emotions. That it is somewhat kind of like a proactivity that's very empowering.
Right.
And that alternative then would tell me that you can choose. Say a little bit about that, because we're almost out of time. So I'd like to hear what you have to say about that.
You said something very important, and it's control, right? We feel out of control when we are told we've got cancer, we've got a serious illness. So we're going to do everything we possibly can to get control back, whether it's your health, your business, whatever. And so it is, it's important to do that, because our brains need that. We don't like chaos. So how can we bring that control back and really be able to acknowledge what's going on, but then say, okay, I got this. I've got this. Yeah, and like we said, you can have a bad day, you can have a bad moment. But then say, I got this. But it does come back to letting others help you. How can they help you get through this? And it all, obviously it all depends on what's going on. Maybe you need rides, maybe you need somebody to um set up your home office, whatever it is. Give people that chance. You've said that several times. We want to help people. So how can we? And how can you help somebody else that might be going through this, right?
Mhm.
Don't just say, "Hey Fran, tell me if you need anything," because your brain's shut off, right? But
Mhm.
yeah, offer something specific. And if it's in the workplace, say, "Hey, I know you do this report every Tuesday. Can you show me how to do it so I can back you up? I'm not going to replace you, but can I do it if you're not able to? And or can I take the lead at this meeting? Can I go to that conference instead of you?" And just make it clear that we're not replacing you. We're just helping you. And that's okay.
Mm, mm. That's such an important point that you just made, because there's a natural tendency to think, if if anybody knows this, um, I'm not going to be valued. I
Mhm,
might be
mhm.
replaced, and that
Yeah.
fear can cause you to
Mhm,
shut down.
mhm. Right.
And so it does ask you to trust,
Mhm,
to trust in the
mhm,
process, to trust
mhm.
in
Right.
how it all works together.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Right. And obviously there are some legal considerations sometimes that you need to take into account. If your business is large enough that you have shareholders or investors, and so if something like this happens, please get in contact with your attorneys, and make sure
Mhm.
that what you're doing is appropriate. You might need to talk to your financial planner,
Mhm.
from a personal and a business perspective. So, again, these are things we should be doing anyway, because
Mhm.
things happen. We get hit by a bus, but you're also going to rethink what your priorities are. There are some people who are going to say, I don't want to be doing that anymore. I enjoyed it, but it's not for me now. So, maybe we're going to help them sell that business or get a new career or do whatever. I tell people I don't want my headstone to say, I wish I would have.
Right.
And that is, I think, one of the biggest things that people have told me is when they get a diagnosis, they think, okay, what is next? What is my legacy going to be? And for some, it's, I want to triple the size of my company. Okay, that's perfectly fine. But yeah, it really does make you rethink your priorities.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow. Well, as always, I'm just amazed at how quickly time
I
flies
know.
when we're having these conversations. And we're down now to just the last few ticks of our time together. What would you like to leave with the audience? And then we want to hear, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, again, Fran, thank you so much for this opportunity. It really has been great, and I thank you so much for this, my sister. And but the thing that I want people to remember is, you feel out of control, you feel like the world is spinning. You are still in charge. You are your own advocate. Make sure that that person in that white coat is not making those decisions for you. You are the person who is going to decide what's going to happen. Make sure that somebody else knows. Usually it's a spouse or friend, because you might not be able to at some point, but let them know, these are my wishes. So have those ducks in a row. Don't go to Dr. Google, folks, and please, please, please don't put this into your AI. You can ask your AI, tell me questions that I need to ask my care team, but don't say, please tell me what I should do, because it pulls in the good, the bad, the ugly. But yeah, you are in charge. And whether it's 5 hours or 50 years, you want it to be how you want it to be.
Hmm. Okay. Deb, tell us, how can people reach out to you?
Well, again, thanks. We've got two websites. The one is tryingnottoDie.live, Live. And that came about because we get so caught up in trying to not die that we forget that we have to live.
Right.
And so tryingnottoDie.live, and you can reach me through there. And then if you are, unfortunately, someone who is a senior level executive who is faced with this diagnosis, and you want some strategic support and somebody who's going to say those bad words, but help you through this, it's yourcancercoach.live.
Okay. Okay. And of course, everybody, we're going to put those links when we go live so that they'll be right there in the comments section so that you can just click on it and, get some time with Deb. If it's not anything but just to have a conversation with her, that because her life experience has been so rich and it can be extremely, extremely helpful for you.
I'll
So
make you
Deb,
laugh.
she'll make like she kept me rolling. So Deb, thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for your care, and just truly, truly appreciate having you on our platform. And to my audience, thank you so much for joining and listening in. And in case you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. My space is as a business strategist. I help businesses get predictable profits and predictable performance. But I'm also there if you have questions about any one of my guests, and also particularly with Deb today. So that's it for now. Thank you again for being here, Deb. Thank you. And I'll see you soon.
Thank you.